Hello everyone, my name is Robin Douglas Westling and I work as a consultant for the Swedish Fashion Council, and I will moderate this conversation today. With me here today at the Finnish Institute, we have the Finnish fashion designer Ervin Latimer, who is a writer, queer artist and managing editor of Ruskat Tytöt, Brown Girls Media. Annamari Vänskä, who is an adjunct professor of fashion research at the Aalto University in Helsinki. Patrik Söderstam, who is a senior lecturer at Konstfack, University of Arts, Crafts and Design in Stockholm. Erika Blomgren is a lecturer and researcher in fashion and textile design at the Swedish School of Textiles in Borås. Kristian David, who is a BA graduate student at the Swedish School of Textiles in Borås. And also Karina Ericsson Wärn, who is the principal and CEO of Beckmans College of Design in Stockholm. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here today for this discussion. We will be having about the work, problems and solutions we stand for regarding a more diverse and inclusive fashion industry and the responsibility of education in this regard. Now, of course, these are deep-seated issues that can't be fixed in 1 hour or solved, but I think it's a very important and promising signal that you all are here today with us, willing to open up the dialogue around these issues. There will be a Q&A for all the people who tuned in for this conversation as well, so you can drop your questions and we can answer on that after this conversation. As we all know, over the last summer, the growing Black Lives Matter movement opened up a much needed discussion about structural racism in the world in the fashion industry. As many individuals globally, but also in Sweden and Finland, felt empowered to be vocal about their own experiences of racial inequality and discrimination in the work field. So let us look back on the previous year. I want to ask, what are the most important things or some knowledge that you have learned from everything that has happened around the Black Lives Movement? And we can start with you, Annamari.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this really important conversation. And I'm really happy to be here as the representative of Aalto University. The question you posed, yes, so I think that two things. First of all, I think it really showed the solidarity of people across the globe, enabled by social media, which was, I think, the second thing that I think was really important, that actually it really showed the power of social media and the ways in which people can show solidarity, share their own experiences, and then try to mediate their own thoughts about it. So I think that was very important, truly important, that I noticed. That I also noticed that that these ideas of diversity, inclusion, and representation, they are really in the momentum of becoming more mainstream now. I think that this is one of the very important things as well. That thus far, I think they be more marginalized within certain fields, within researchers, for example, interested in issues of diversity, inclusion, and gender and sexuality and so forth. So now this is something that we all discuss more or less, even in this discussion here today. And then I think that this was a real big wake-up call to fashion industry. There have been so many, I've been writing about fashion scandals of the 2010s with my colleague Olga Gurova from Denmark. And we've been analyzing many of them sort of race or ethnicity related scandals that many global fashion brands and also local brands have faced within the, I don't know, last 5 to 10 years. And I think that those scandals and what we are witnessing now have also woken up the industry to become more inclusive and diverse. And there are many things that we can discuss there, but I see some changes that might be on the way as well.
Thank you so much. So, and unfortunately, the fashion industry is no stranger to excluding practices. While diversity in the external communication of fashion corporation and institutions has improved a lot over the last decennium, this diversity is not yet reflected where it matters most, in the internal structures of the industry. So, Ervin, what do you think about the difference between the growing diversity in the visible part of the fashion industry versus the lack thereof behind closed doors?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And I also want to say thank you to everybody who is joining in this conversation together with the exhibition that I have here at the Institute in Stockholm. Yeah, I think it's important to understand that, yes, just as Annamari mentioned, we are having this moment of change that is happening now, and this moment of focus that is now pointed towards these issues. I think what is happening now that we're slowly sort of realizing that, yes, it matters. For example, in a fashion context, who we see in a fashion image or fashion campaign, who is the sort of spokesperson, etc., for a brand. But I think we are at the very sort of early stages of understanding that there are certain types of power structures and certain types of decision making that is behind that. So therefore, it also matters who is in those positions that are making those decisions, and who is, because ultimately diversity, inclusion, representation, it really is about power and who is in the position of power and then in the position of making decisions. So I think naturally, because it's easier to comprehend that it matters who is in the image, etc., because it's much more complex to understand why that person ended up in that image. But I think the sort of big step and big push that we have to do next is having that difficult conversation that why are certain people in positions of power, etc.
So you think this could perhaps be a source of a lot of the racial problems we experience in fashion?
I would say so, yes. I ultimately think, like I said, I think it really is about power. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify things, that just because, say, a white person is in a position of power, that's the reason why we have racism. It's obviously much more complex than that. But I think because we are used to making certain types of experiences, certain type of identities as a norm in fashion, I think quite naturally we tend to uphold that, and we tend to sort of keep that on the pedestal. And the complicated thing is when you have to realize that, okay, we're not even in that sense, and that the other people should be pushed forward as well. The complicated thing is when you understand that you have to do that without really benefiting yourself, if you understand what I mean, because it really ultimately is about sort of sharing that power and sharing that sharing those opportunities that those other people who are maybe marginalized or not seen as the norm naturally get.
Thank you so much.
Overly simplified answer to a really complicated question.
Yeah, but education is a concrete gateway into the fashion industry. This means that fashion schools have a great responsibility to create an inclusive and learning environment where anyone in Finland and Sweden can feel like they belong and that they matter. Now we know that a lot of the youth today is very passionate and vocal about the topics as well, which I can imagine makes a very interesting dynamic at the schools. Patrik, how have you worked with diversity questions before at Konstfack, and what kind of role does diversity take for you today?
I've been a lecturer for 12 years now at Konstfack, and for almost every year I've been in the admission work, I think it's called, when you take students in. You're looking for students who want to come into us. So I was just going to talk about that a bit. Like, I think there's a problem there, because I sit on power, and I'm not afraid of using it, but it's a bit it's not so edgy, this power, because there's not so. I think I would like this. I can take Konstfack as an example. It might be the similar thing at other schools, I don't know, but it's like we have every year then taking in students, and then we talk about who we got and how they, like, the group looks and where they come from, the backgrounds, and etc. And we want to take in people from different backgrounds, but it's very hard because they don't come to us. And then we put together groups in Konstfack that are going to try to get other people in, like people with other backgrounds and so. But it's very hard work, and it comes down to sort of me to do that, my college. And I think it would be much better if the school, the college, found a super interesting, hip, cool person that do that 100% sort of. And it's always an economical issue that we can't afford that. So I think it should come down to sort of the government, or whoever has the money to support that. And really look everywhere and be out doing that 100%. And because I can't put 2.5% on that. You know what I mean? So this is sort of how it is. So it's quite difficult.
Do you mind if I add? I think you raise also a really interesting and important point, that it is. Yes, there's a challenge of like who is applying, etc. But I think it's a really important to ask this question, that why aren't certain people applying? And I think that directly sort of connects to what we were sort of mentioning here earlier, that if your experience is not seen in the industry, if you don't see yourself, if your experience is not validated in the conversation or what you see visually in the industry, then of course you feel like, well, why should I apply? Because I probably don't think that my story is worthwhile, or at least it will be very hard to push it forward. And I think there's this cause and effect kind of relationship over there, where like one affects the other sort of constantly in a loop. I don't know if the other panelists have anything to comment to this.
Is there anyone who wants to comment on this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I'm also part of the. I'm working for the Swedish School of Fashion, and I'm also part of the application process, and I can really agree with what Philip says here regarding like who are applying to us, and that we maybe sometimes see a certain pattern in a way, and that's that this comes maybe much earlier, that need to we see some tendencies there in a way. Patterns, yes.
But Erika, you are working at the Swedish School of Textiles in Borås. What are your thoughts on the importance of diversity, and how has the discussion about these issues been at the school between students and staff?
Yeah, I think it's a continuous discussion. Always, actually, it's always discussed, and also we have been talking a lot about like how can we broaden the variety of applicants, like how can we reach out to maybe people who we see doesn't apply to us, and that we are actually really interested in having also other types of applicants, like for us it's a very important question that we discuss a lot here.
Yeah, but and that leads me actually to another question, and I want to speak with you about that, Karina, at Beckmans. As you know, there are many organizations working with issues of diversity and education around it. What do you think the value is of collaboration with such organizations? And do you have experience with such organizations with Beckmans?
First, thanks for inviting me. And we do have experience from large organizations, but we actually tend to not cooperate with large organizations. We like to be more activists ourselves. So we work in a more hands-on way with so many different projects when it comes to finding actually new applicants. We work with kids, for example, that are around as young as 7 years old in workshops every year in the Stockholm suburb, Tensta. And then it's the hip young students, of course, who are the teachers, not myself or the teachers. So we actually learn the kids that this is what design can be about. You can actually study design, and designer can be a profession. And so we prefer to work locally, which doesn't mean that we are only in Stockholm. We also have another project called Beckmans on Tour. And then we are touring actually with students and a 3D lab on wheels and meet youngsters in different towns around in Sweden and learn them also that about 3D design, and again, what design can be about. It can be a profession. It can be your profession in the future. So we work in small scale, but in many, many different projects instead.
And do you think, do you see any like changes from the applicants to the school?
Not yet. The project is 7 years old. It started like 2-3 years ago, so it will take a while before they show up at Beckmans. But the thing is actually that they have babysitters that are older sisters and brothers. We bring the older sisters and brothers to Beckmans for lunch and so on, while the young ones are in the workshop creating with design. I think we slowly see some changes, but it will take time. And to go back to your first question or notion about Black Lives Matter, I think the whole Black Lives Matter movement is a signal. Not a signal. It's a receipt actually that we have all failed within this field. I mean, totally. So, but we all work with it, but we have to act harder actually.
Thank you. Kristian, do you think weak points or points of improvement in education are being recognized? And what concrete measures do you think can be done to fix them right now and in the future?
Well, first of all, I also want to say thank you very much for having me on this panel. And I'm glad that we've reached a sort of like a focus area, by the way, also in terms of like who is applying to these, fine arts educations. And a lot of my points are actually based on this. But I mean, to your question, I mean, there are various points that have been identified to a certain extent, such as, how to proceed with cultural discussions in course content, for one. On top of that, and speaking from experience, I know that the board is definitely responsive and open to the conversations. However, like we've touched upon here, if there's something that these past few months have taught us, is that we need more than a discussion and some petitions. We need action. And as for these measures, I believe that realistically, the thing that will actually make a difference is to dive into the root of the problem by, for one, acknowledging the fact that our working environments are indeed homogeneous. And in addition, a concrete resolution I feel is ideal is to establish a direct and consistent interaction with the segment that is secluded from, say, a fine arts education, which we've also touched a little bit. And the way we can sort of conduct this is by having one or a few candidates whom this segment can actually relate to in terms of a cultural background, upbringing, and everything in between. And through that, they can present the content of our education in terms of who we are and what we do. And I believe this is fairly important as we're progressing as a culture, because if there is even like a slightest chance that various immigrant parents have doubts regarding their child becoming an engineer or a lawyer, I really believe that we can be that decisive factor.
Thank you. Annamari, do you agree about this? What has the discussion been at Aalto University? Now you're muted again.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what's in me. I'm talking in Zoom every day. Anyway, so I think this is a very important discussion to have, and it is true that it should not just stay on the level of discussion, because then it's often something that we just take up in a very specific occasion, like when we want to celebrate ourselves or something that we are good in this. But it should actually be something that we do something about. And at Aalto University, I've been here for 5 years now, and during that time, I think that within the last year or so, the discussion has spread from the students to staff. So actually, we've now, last autumn, we established in our school a work group for diversity and inclusion, and it's supposed to benefit students and staff and sort of think about these things on a structural level at our university, and I'm part of that work group. Then last year we also sort of, I and my colleague from the business school, we were sort of helping out Aalto University to become part of this network of 9 other Finnish universities that work to enhance the education of gender, sexuality, ethnicity, and race in Finland. And this is an initiative that was originally made by University of Helsinki and their gender department, and now it's sort of these 9 universities that are part of that. And now Aalto University from the beginning of this year is also part of that network, thanks to the very strong support that we received from our colleagues in respective schools. So we are really happy about that. And that means also that now our students who focus mainly on design education, they also have the chance to take courses on these matters, because I think that education here plays also a really important role in the in making this change. So that's something that we've done so far at Aalto. Yes, and of course our design students, they work on these issues every day. I mean, this is something that they work on and they actually change it. So the representation becomes very different, has become very different through our student work as well.
Thank you. And Karina, how are diversity and inclusion addressed at Beckmans? And what is your thought of the Northern Fashion Universities regarding the question at the moment?
Well, of course, but I can speak for Beckmans College of Design, but within a year actually we will have data, at least for the Swedish colleges and universities, because UKÄ, in English I think it's the Swedish Higher Education Authority, maybe, they are doing an evaluation of about how colleges and universities in Sweden are working with these issues actually. And that's it's going on at the moment. So within a year, I can give you some statistics, but I think it moves on slowly. But on the other hand, I mean, the university and the colleges can't like deliver a quick fix on this, because I mean, if you look at the education system, this starts already in grade 1. Where you end up as a student, if you're 7-8 years old, what kind of school you enroll, if you can choose or not choose, and so on. So the problem is wider, of course, but I think everyone is doing their best, but we really have to step up even more.
Thank you. And I want to follow up a little, Annamari, about the students who is talking with lecturers. Do you think students and personnel are able to discuss diversity, representation, and the possible lack of them freely and in a constructive manner?
But we are trying to create those situations where the discourse could go forward. And I would say that it is not an easy discussion to be had. That's something that we should actually recognize, because it is a very I feel it's important, but at the same time it is an emotional discussion, because we actually need to face problems, and we actually need to be quite open about it, that we are not doing so well as we like to think that we are. So it is very important, and I think that we actually somehow lack the tools to even start the conversation, because it is sort of outside our comfort zone in a way. So it is not maybe easy, but it's necessary. Really, it is. Yes.
Yeah, do you mind if I add, just as a student who recently graduated from Aalto, I think Annamari is very much to the point here, and I think it's very important to recognize to us all here in this panel, to everyone who's listening, that it's definitely work, and it's definitely you need to learn a lot of things to be able to have the tools to discuss these things. And exactly how Annamari said, that it is, we take great pride in the Nordic countries about our education system and how generally well we do as countries. So it's always a tough spot to look in the mirror and realize that there are factors where we've failed quite in a sort of remarkable way. So, and also from my point of view as a person of color, or sort of discussing these things and trying to raise these points, so in an academic system where I don't automatically feel seen, it is also it's stressful for me to bring those things up, as it is might be stressful or difficult to the staff and faculty to discuss. So there are, I think, what's sort of apparent here, that again this is like a sort of a multi-layered challenge, because it is about having the tools to discuss. It is about understanding power structures. It is about then utilizing that power to have all of these great programs and initiatives that all of you guys mentioned, and sort of that sort of work and everything that's related to that, who wants to apply, etc. So, and like you said in the beginning, within this hour, we won't be able to solve anything, but I think it's super important. I again want to sort of repeat that I'm super happy that I think this is the first discussion like this between fashion universities in Finland and Sweden. So this is where this work starts. And it is a sort of a path and work where we're at the beginning.
Have you notified anything, Patrik, at Konstfack regarding students' opinions and discussion with lecturers like yourself?
Yeah, but it's very hard. I mean, it's easy. Becomes quite that you get afraid of it, like both the student and the teacher, myself including. And I think it's really important that we need to find an environment where you're not afraid to make mistakes, to say the wrong word or do the wrong exhibition or the wrong project, that we can discuss it and so we're not afraid of experimenting or say so we don't put ourselves on too high horses in theory, that we can actually talk about it and not be silenced about it. And I think there is I don't want to go into this with this the white sea at Konstfack, who is the big discussion right now, but it's very important for the students who raise that question, that they can make experiment with an issue like that and go far away, go to just say stuff and not be afraid of it and see what happens, and then we could discuss it in a interesting and constructive manner. Like,
thank you. And Karina, is it how has the situation at the Beckmans been and the conversation between students and teachers?
It's ongoing, actually, since we send out our students and our alumni into the projects that work with the inclusion and diversity, and I think, or I don't think, I know actually that the students are our hardest critics, and therefore more than, super welcome every time when we have this kind of dialogues and discussions. So it's thanks to the students, actually, that things are moving on in a good way, forward in right direction.
Can I just say one
Yes,
thing?
of course.
Just so you don't get me wrong, I think the discussion about the white sea in Konstfack, I think the students did a totally fantastic job. So I don't think they made a mistake with that. So just to be clear.
Yeah, it is okay to make things clear.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
This panel,
I need it.
Let's make sure to have a sort of space here where it's very fine to make sure that you're understood well.
And I want to know from both you, Ervin and Kristian, what are the possible threats that follow ignorant attitudes towards diversity and inclusion in fashion educations?
Would you like me to start?
You can begin, Kristian, if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I believe we've seen the effects of such attitudes for a while now. And one particular principle is tokenism, which is essentially based on, only making this symbolic effort to include members of minority groups. And concretely, one can see this in the entire industry, ranging from the largest houses to even student level, where we think the solution is just to bring in a bunch of Black models, which is clearly not the answer. And from a designer's perspective, I think this aspect is rather critical because it says a lot about our creative vision in itself. And an accompanying threat in terms of a diverse staff and students, for instance, which I wouldn't exactly classify as a deliberately ignorant attitude, is affirmative action. And for those that don't know, this principle is based on implementing a set of policies to increase representation only based on gender, race, sexuality, etc. And this, I feel, holds the risk of eradicating creativity from the equation and converting this crucial discourse into a charity case, if you will. And where the applicants won't have been accepted based on their talent. So I feel like those two are like the main threats that I've identified.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think sort of one of the biggest challenges that I see, obviously, we have all of these great universities in the Nordic countries, and I think surely everyone would agree that we are, we have students that we aim to work abroad, and we aim them to work globally in a global context. And I think that's sort of crucial to understand that in my work sometimes I hear that, but there aren't that many Black people, etc., in Finland, so this is not such, you should it's okay not to have that many Black models, blah blah blah. But I think even if there would be no people of color in any of these countries, even if there weren't any of these marginalized experiences, which of course isn't true, but even if it was like that, we're still operating in this global system. So we still need to have these tools to work as designers, to work as creatives globally in a global context, because those experiences do exist, even though there might be a disproportionate amount of those in these countries. But obviously, Black people, gender, sexual minorities, etc., do exist in these countries too. So it's even more important. But I think, yeah, tokenism it's a really, I'm glad that you took that point. And I think in general it seems that we're also having this moment that, well, okay, if we apply these practices, if we apply these so-called rules, it is somehow limiting us. But you could see it as a limit, but I personally don't really see those things as limits. I think I see those practices, I see those sort of initiatives as sort of cues to rewire our brains to be more creative in different ways, and to be more inventive, and to be more to be better at creative. So, for example, just an easy example that I could say is, and we're not gonna get into cultural appropriation here because we could have another panel for that. But it's easy to, in the fashion context, to say that, you're not allowed to do anything because everything is appropriating some culture. But I think that doesn't limit your creativity. That is literally just saying that come up with something new. So I think just in general, the attitude here should be that we're right. Really, I want my peers and fellow creatives to do new things and be better and answer to the global moment that we are at now, and answer to the discussion that finally is out in the open, that has been happening always in the background, but we're just having this global moment, thankfully now. Yeah, where there's space for that. I don't know if I went too far with my answer, but you shouldn't let me talk about this, because I'm just gonna talk for an hour.
and just to add, I'd like to add just right quickly, right? And
sure.
This is crazy that I can sometimes hear or have heard students walking around and thinking that did I only get accepted because of my skin color, and that to me is nuts, and we need to actually point that out as an elephant in the room, because it is a critical condition, what I mean? So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and that also leads me to solutions as well, and we can begin with you, Kristian. Is there anything that you see as a concrete solution for this problem on both a long and a short term?
Yes, you mean like in terms of the points I've brought up, right?
Yes.
Like threats.
And actually
Okay.
also to make Nordic fashion industries and educations more attractive and approachable for people.
I mean, like personally, you know, and I'm getting back to my point. To me, it's about actually identifying like how do I want to communicate my work. You know, like I think that really matters. You know, in terms of course, I'm speaking for myself from a fashion design student perspective, right? Like how do I want to communicate my work? Like I said before, and whom do I see my clothes in? Of course, like we need to think beyond just like I said before, you know, okay, so I've gotten backlash for not being diverse. Maybe I should, you know, consider having a black model, which is not the answer. I know that, you know, this is a sensitive discussion and we need to have it. But in my case, you know, I guess it is rather simplified because, you know, I can turn to Middle Easterners, you know, and just be like, okay, these are obviously my models because they look like me. But whereas if you're a Swede, I mean, that, you know, that raises the question of, okay, what type of model should I use to not be, you know, to do the right thing, I guess, if you will, you know. And is there even a right thing? What I believe is that there is this sense of authenticity that I want to include other models, people we see on the streets, because we design for the real world. We don't design for this secluded atmosphere, right? Which is, I guess that would be my point, you know.
Erika, is there anything at Borås that you have discussed internally about solution for making our fashion industry more attractive and approachable?
Well, I was just thinking about when during Kristian was speaking. I mean, it also has to do with the traditional ways how we learn to make fashion, like what tools do we use, and for example, like the basic dummy that we are using, that it also kind of creates a certain norm of how like a human body looks like, and how can we maybe we need to begin to the very basic also, like what kind of what does the future bodies look like, and how can we make fashion more including in that sense, like who are you designing for, and also that the possibilities with bringing in like a broader like applicants from in a broader sense. It also creates like different knowledge and different experience, and also open up for new question and to answer like design related problems. So what we do, that was the question. Sorry, I was talking along here. The question was
yes, how we make any solutions for making the fashion educations and industry more attractive and approachable for more people.
I think, I mean, it really it starts with also like reaching out for various types of society, like societal cultures maybe, and also to open up from the beginning in the application process, like what type of assignments do we have for the applicants, and also then also in the syllabuses to open up maybe the assignments given as well, like how do we formulate the assignments in the syllabuses and the courses. So I think, I mean, that is something that we are I mean, constantly changing and looking at, and try to open up that much more.
And I want to ask the same question to you, Annamari, as well. Have you come up with any solutions at Aalto University?
Well, of course, our teaching at Aalto University is sort of based on creativity, enforcing that, and then at the same time building your knowledge base. So I think that these are So the more you know, the better you can cope as a designer in the future. So we have established quite many courses that are actually theory-based courses, but then we have sort of combined them with design courses where you can actually put these ideas into practice. And of course, we communicate we have a dialogue, very open dialogue with our students, and we take their considerations and wishes and concerns into account. And we constantly discuss with colleagues that how to make the course syllabus, for example, better, and how to take various different aspects into account, because of course education needs to follow the society and what changes there are, and then also what changes there are in the industry, and also educate our students into those experts who can actually then be the change in the industry after their education and after they graduate. So, and sometimes these changes are very small, like we had a menswear project for BA students, and now it is not a menswear project anymore, it's a tailoring project. So in a way, by just, rethinking the terms that you use, for example, you can then open up a whole new world, and a way of doing and thinking. And so everything that Erika said, I think that is very important. And yes, we try to do the same things.
Yeah. And Ervin, do you have thought about any solutions regarding education?
Sure. So obviously, yeah, because I approach this as from a student perspective. So I don't understand all of the sort of systems that surround how you create studies in academia. I think I would say a rather more like a simplified answer to this. I think that I should, as I'm a brown gay man myself, I think that I should be able to apply to a design school or a fashion school, knowing that things that I would want to discuss with my intersecting identities, I would get the same level of discussion than my peers would. I think it's rather simple like that. But the road to that, to make sure that the faculty is ready to have the discussion, that they have the language and the skills, that there are systems put at place, that the stories that me or any other person like me with similar experiences, that their story systematically is seen as equally valid and equally important. And this isn't, I'm not saying that there are mean professors who say that Black and gay people aren't important. That's not the case. I'm talking about these biases that we don't recognize, that come from the system, that come from the way that we're brought up, where we don't necessarily immediately recognize that we see thing A more important and valid than thing B. I think that's like a simple thing. I think any person like that shouldn't be worried, because I know when I was preparing my master's thesis, my master's thesis about Black and brown queer culture and menswear design, I seriously was thinking that I'm not like, do I want to do this? Because I'm not sure if it's going to be an enjoyable experience. I knew that it would be a valid thesis to come up with, but I seriously thought that maybe I should just choose something easier, because from experience in classrooms, etc., I knew that there are other topics where I could get more nuanced discussion, etc. And that's not. I'm not saying that but knowing that there are specific people who I wouldn't like in the staff. Quite the opposite. But I think just from speaking as a student or someone who recently graduated, I think we should create a system and we should create an environment in Nordic countries where students like me shouldn't hesitate. And this starts, like we mentioned earlier, from the application process, that they see that these schools are valid and that they're open for their stories, all the way through the education, graduation, and then after that, sort of lifting them, pushing them forward.
Thank you. And Patrik, you were in the beginning of this conversation talking a little bit about solutions. Is there anything more you have discussed at Konstfack as a solution for recruiting more students with a more diverse background?
Yeah, I don't know really. I think I said what I was going to say about that earlier, but what I want to say, just what I do more, is more like how I work as a tutor. That I really try to pep talk the students into looking at norms
Yeah.
and how to break them and how to see them, because there's so much norms that we need to look at.
Yeah.
And you know, I try to visualize them for the students, and also say that allow them to break them, you know.
Yeah.
So if you see norms everywhere and then try to expose them to change or to progression, I think there's a lot to do. You think you're a progressive person, but then if you get questioned, like, have you seen that or that? You can do that, that. What's the meaning about that? There's so much details in life, small and big, that you can question. So I really try to find the positive way of you know, to bringing the students to be activists, as Karina said.
Yeah.
You know, like to really pep talk them into doing that, allow them to experiment and break the norms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Karina, how has the conversations been at Beckmans regarding solutions as well?
I think like the headline for all of us is maybe to just thinking the terms that Beckmans should be a platform where everyone feel at home. That this could be a place for me as well, whatever background I have or race or color that you say here. So we work a lot also. This goes through everything, but not at least about in the way how we communicate, what kind of stories we send out and how they are told and so on. And this also goes down to what kind of language we use. I mean, words and letters. And that also goes down to the assignments, of course. We have, for example, for the last 2 years, gone through the assignments very, very hard and taking away a lot of assignments that have to do with writing, a lot to do. So you should be able to apply to Beckmans. We want to have best students, of course, and the most motivated students. But today you can apply to Beckmans and you don't have to write in a perfect Swedish, which I think is very important. So it's down to the details and on a very high level as well, overall level.
Thank you so much. And I want to ask the lecturers. We have here now like 4 lectures from our nation's top art and fashion educations, and we are touching on that base a little bit about role models. So do you think there is a problem that all of you is white regarding to the question of recruiting more diverse background students? You can begin with you, Karina.
Yeah, of course. What else can I say? Of course. Yeah. We are received as well here on the situation, actually.
You all agree about the question? You can, Annamari.
Well, I don't think that there is any other answer to that than yes, of course. But at the same time, I think that it's very important to sort of bear in mind all the time that not only one thing is the decisive matter. Kristian, I think, brought up the idea of tokenism, and I think that it's sort of and also the sort of the other variables that we have. It's about gender, it's about sexual orientation, it's about cultural background, even class issues that multifacetedly intertwine and intersect. So I think that it's not only one thing, but we need to think about the entirety of diverse aspects of identity. And I think that also in passing, at least in the beginning, I think it was very, very good that somebody mentioned that institutions are often homogeneous. And I think that this is really, of course, fashion is about being an individual and being part of something and of being a part of a group. And I think that groups tend to be rather similar. And this applies to fashion, but it also applies to universities as well. So whom we hire, it's somehow unconsciously, it may not be even a decision that we make, but somehow we end up with very similar people. And unless we educate ourselves and open ourselves to this this process, why this happens all over again, we will never change. So I think that the problem is on on several levels, I guess.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just add something? Yeah, obviously I 100% agree. And I think to sort of Annamari's point, that it's to add on that it's not just, I don't think that the issue is just the fact that we're not hiring in this moment, we're not hiring specific, that is an issue as well. But I think the reason why you lecturers look like this, I think, is a very natural thing of who the system sort of pushes to become professionals and to become career people in what you do. I think there's no shame in that. It's a very natural. I think that's why we need to talk about power structures and these sort of systems, and sort of what can we do to make sure that in 20 years we don't even have to look, we don't even have to worry. We would be like surprised if this, it would be like, oh, we have so many professionals and only these were the people that were able to attend. I think that is also the sort of more difficult and the thing that takes more time, that we need to create the system that automatically creates these professionals that can have these discussions. Because I think I just want to say that because I think it's equally important to ask that difficult question, that like, do we have to recognize the fact that this is what professionals in our industry look like, but we also sort of, I think, have to understand that there's a natural reason why that has happened, and we need to break that cycle, and it really is up to us to make those changes to push other experiences forward.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone who wants to add something in on that, on what Ervin said?
Just quick, yeah, of course, I totally agree. But we have this thing in our Nordic countries where we go about things very mildly, with lack of a better word. And I feel like the accurate approach is to go about this topic quite radically and unapologetically, that because obviously we know what the problem is. We know that this is a problem, but what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to identify the tools to tackle this issue? And I feel like the only thing, or the only way to go about it is to be radical, to actually okay, this can we can actually merge these experiences, like I said before, with for example, going to upper elementary schools, and like me, as like being from the Middle East, these kids can actually relate to what I'm saying, and they can actually see, like we were, for example, we were at this Voga event, which is about recruiting kids from other backgrounds and such. And there was a very critical thing that happened, is that I passed by these kids, and they automatically went quiet. So just that, just that energy and that communication is very vital in terms of like, who are we bringing as representatives? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sorry. I just want to like, yes, and like I totally agree. I totally agree that we need radical action. That's why we're having these discussions, etc. And that's why I said that it's good that we ask these difficult questions. But I just wanted to add on top of that it's important that we also understand this, that we are upholding the system that generates a specific type of a professional or a designer. So I think sort of from both ends, in the long term, we need that change, but also in a quicker, sort of more radical way, we need to do that change. 100%. Thank you for bringing that point up.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the audience we have? Yes.
There is one from Erik Anneboon.
Yes. I think.
Should I read it, or do you want to?
Yes, we have one question here that is still unanswered. I think you talked a little bit about this, but still, maybe you could elaborate a little bit more. So there is someone asking, besides models and students, are you working with diversifying the leadership in the schools?
We can begin with you, Patrik.
But can you take that question again? Sorry.
Yes. Besides models and students, are you working with diversifying the leadership in the schools?
I mean, the leadership. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I come from education from St. Martin's in London, where the teachers were very, rough and hard, and there was like you couldn't really talk to them. I think in Konstfack we really tried to be on the same level as the students, and that's quite hard for the students actually, because it's easy to be told to do that and that and that, but if you give responsibility to the student, then it also pushes them to take their own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good answer, but so yeah, I think we try to push the students in that way.
How, Annamari, do you want to answer on the same question?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really important question, a good question. And I would say that I think it's something that needs to be planned really carefully. And of course, it depends how you hire. And do you hire amongst the existing staff or somebody from outside? Because that really affects who you hire in the higher positions. Into the leadership. So I think that when you are talking about hires that are an open call, then you have maybe a better chance to diversify. But if you hire internally, then maybe not so much. I think, this is also a really good question to be had. But I mean, at Aalto University, I think that we have we try to be diverse. Yes. But we could be better, should be better.
Erika, do you want to answer on the same question?
Yeah, I can only agree with Annamari and say that we could be more diverse as well, and we try to be, but we can also be better. We are, as I said, very aware about it, and we discuss around it. But of course, there's a lot of things that we need to change. So I can agree to that.
Thank you. Is there any more questions from the audience? But then I really want to thank you all for participating in this very needed conversation. And I think we all came up with some really interesting points and ideas for a better fashion industry in the future. And thank you so much for everyone who tuned in to this conversation as well. And thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to say, sort of as this sort of webinar was created in junction with the exhibition that I have over here, that I really hope that we as representatives of these universities really sort of take this moment as a starting point for something new, for something to have this discussion going on forward, and recognizing that you need also smart young new people like Kristian and me to come and talk with you and come and discuss about these things, and we're really willing and open to do that. So really let's have this as this sort of starting gun, if you can say, for something, because I think we have beautiful opportunities here in the Nordics to do really well.
Indeed.
Yes, we need to collaborate as well.
Yes. Cue in the Swedish and Finnish flag.
Yes.
And Ervin, I usually say, also like a conclusion right here. I usually say, do you know how many people in Sweden that make our pizzas that are actually artists? You know what I'm saying? Like just that part of the equation is just important to look at, that, these people are, yes, they are secluded, but, there's so much potential that, isn't always seen. And it's a shame that, that goes to waste, or that isn't really used, especially in education, where that can create a platform for you.
Exactly. And it benefits us all. It doesn't just benefit those marginalized experiences, it benefits us all.
Really. Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.